I smile when Mrs. Chun from next door asks about my son's new job. I nod enthusiastically when Mr. Rodriguez mentions how proud I must be of my daughter's wedding. I lie through my teeth when anyone asks if my children are coming for the holidays. The truth? I don't know where they are. Not exactly, anyway. I have their addresses, cold, clinical addresses, I found through a private investigator I hired with the last of my savings. But I don't have them. Not really. Not in any way that matters. My name is Margaret Chen. Yes, same last name as my neighbor, pure coincidence, and I am 73 years old. I live alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Sacramento, the kind with thin walls where you can hear everything your neighbors do. I hear their children visit. I hear the grandchildren laughing. I hear the Sunday dinners, the birthday celebrations, the ordinary chaos of families that actually exist beyond holiday cards and performative social media posts. I hear everything I don't have. But here's what nobody knows, what I've never told anyone, not even Father Michael at St. Augustine's where I volunteer every Tuesday. I deserved this. Every single moment of this suffocating loneliness. I earned it. And the worst part? I didn't even realize I was doing it until it was far, far too late. I spent 30 years building a wall between me and my children brick by brick, and I was so focused on making it perfect that I never noticed I was the one being locked out. It started so small. That's what I need you to understand. It wasn't one catastrophic moment. It was 1,000 tiny cuts, 1,000 choices I made that seemed right at the time, that seemed like love, that seemed like I was doing my job as a mother. I was wrong about all of it. Let me take you back to 1985. I was 33 years old, married to David Chun for 11 years, and we had 2 children, Michael, who is 9, and Sarah, who is 7. David was a chemical engineer at a pharmaceutical company, pulling in good money, and I was a part-time bookkeeper at a dental office. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs of San Jose, the kind with a 2-car garage and a backyard perfect for birthday parties. From the outside, we looked like we had it all figured out. But inside that house, I was drowning in a fear I couldn't name. My own mother had been, how do I say this, emotionally absent. She was there physically cooking meals and doing laundry, but she never really saw me. Never asked what I was thinking or feeling. When I got accepted to UC Berkeley, her only comment was that it was too expensive and I should go to community college instead. When I married David, she complained that the wedding was too extravagant, even though we paid for most of it ourselves. I promised myself I would be different. I would be involved. I would care about every detail of my children's lives. I would make sure they knew I was paying attention. That promise became my prison. I micromanaged everything. Michael's homework? I checked every answer. Rewrote his essays if they weren't perfect.
Saresse piano lessons?
I sat through every single one, timing her practice sessions with a stopwatch. When Michael tried out for Little League, I was there at every practice, shouting instructions from the sidelines, correcting his stance, his swing, his attitude. David would tell me to ease up. Let them breathe, Margaret, he'd say. Let them make mistakes. But I couldn't. Mistakes meant failure, and failure meant I wasn't doing my job. Failure meant I was becoming my mother. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. I was so terrified of being absent that I became suffocating instead, and suffocation, it turns out, is just another way of making your children wish you weren't there. By the time Michael was in high school, things started to shift. He became quiet, withdrawn. He'd come home and go straight to his room. When I'd knock on his door to talk about his day, his college applications, his future, he'd give me one-word answers. Sarah was more outwardly rebellious. She quit piano, joined the drama club against my wishes, started dating a boy I told her wasn't good enough. I told myself they were just being teenagers. This was normal. It would pass. It didn't pass. Michael got into Stanford, a miracle I told everyone, though deep down I knew it was because he was brilliant, not because of my constant intervention. But when he left for college, he barely called. Maybe once a week, and those calls lasted less than 5 minutes. When I'd visit, bringing care packages and home-cooked meals, he seemed annoyed more than grateful. Mom, I have to study, he'd say. I just want to help. I'd reply. I know, he'd say, and there was something in his voice, something tired and resigned, that I didn't want to examine too closely. Sarah went to UCLA. She stopped calling altogether after the first semester. When I'd call her, she'd let it go to voicemail. When I'd leave messages, she'd text back. Busy. Talk later. Later never came. David tried to talk to me about it. This was around 2002, both kids were in college and we were sitting in our living room on a Sunday evening. He muted the television and turned to me with this serious expression. Margaret, we need to talk about the kids. What about them? I said, defensive immediately. They're pulling away. You must see it. They're busy. They're adjusting to college life. It's normal. It's not normal, he said quietly. They don't want to come home for Thanksgiving. Michael told me he's going to a friend's house instead. Sarah's going to some beach trip with her roommates. I felt something crack inside my chest.
What?
Why didn't they tell me? Because they knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like it's a personal attack. Margaret, they need space. They need to know we trust them to live their own lives. I stood up. I remember this so clearly. I stood up and I said, I gave them everything. Everything. And this is how they repay me. David looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Pity. That's the problem, he said. You keep thinking about it as something they owe you. I didn't speak to him for 3 days after that. The first crack in my world wasn't my children leaving. It was the moment my husband looked at me like I was a stranger, and I realized I'd been keeping score in a game nobody else agreed to play. 2 years later, David had a heart attack. He was 54 years old, too young, too sudden. One moment he was mowing the lawn, the next he was on the ground clutching his chest. The paramedics said he was dead before he hit the grass. Both children came home for the funeral. Michael had graduated and was working at Google. Sarah was finishing her senior year. They stood on either side of me during the service, and I felt their hands on my shoulders, and for a moment, one beautiful, delusional moment, I thought this tragedy would bring us back together. After the funeral, Michael stayed for 3 days. Sarah stayed for 4. Then they both left, and the silence in that house became unbearable. I started calling them more. Every day, sometimes twice a day. I needed to hear their voices. I needed to know they were okay. I needed them to need me. Michael started letting my calls go to voicemail. Sarah blocked my number after I called her workplace when she didn't answer her cell. That's when I hired the first therapist. Dr. Susan Palmer, a kind woman in her 50s who listened to me pour out my heart for 6 sessions before she said something that made me walk out and never come back. Margaret, have you considered that your children might not be the problem? I told her she didn't understand. I told her she wasn't a mother, that she couldn't possibly know what it felt like to love someone so much and have them reject you. I told her I was paying her to fix my children, not to analyze me. I never went back. That was 2005. 20 years ago. And here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. I had a chance. Right then, I had a chance to change everything. But I was so convinced I was right, so certain that I was the victim in this story, that I threw it away. The next few years were a slow descent into a kind of madness I didn't recognize as madness. I sold the house in San Jose, too many memories, too much space for one person, and moved to this apartment in Sacramento. I told myself it was a fresh start. I told myself the kids would visit more if I lived somewhere smaller, more manageable. They didn't visit at all. Michael got married in 2008. I found out through Facebook. Not an invitation, not a phone call, a photo album titled Our Special Day that appeared in my feed. I sat at my computer for 3 hours just staring at pictures of my son in a tuxedo, smiling wider than I'd seen him smile in years, his arm around a woman I'd never met. His mother-in-law was in the photos. His father-in-law was walking his new wife down the aisle. I wasn't there. I printed out one of the photos and mailed it to him with a note. Congratulations on your marriage. I wish I could have been there to see you so happy. Love, Mom. He never responded. I learned that day that there are worse things than being hated by your children, being so irrelevant that they don't even consider you important enough to hurt. Sarah got engaged in 2010. This time, I did get an invitation, but it came via email, and it was clear from the tone that it was obligatory. Margaret Chun and guests are invited. Not, Mom. Not, we'd love for you to be there. Just my full name, like I was some distant aunt they felt obligated to include. I RSVP'd yes immediately. I bought an expensive dress. I had my hair done. I practiced what I would say to Sarah, how I would tell her how beautiful she looked, how proud I was, how much I loved her. I arrived at the venue, a winery in Napa Valley, and I couldn't find my assigned seat. My name wasn't on any of the table cards for the main reception area. A coordinator finally found me on a list for a separate room, a smaller space where they'd seated various overflow guests who weren't close family or friends. I sat at a table with strangers, people who didn't know Sarah, who were there because they were plus ones or distant relatives of the groom. During the speeches, they showed a video montage of Sarah's life. There were dozens of photos, baby pictures, childhood memories, college graduation. I appeared in exactly 3 of them, and in 2 of those, I was partially cropped out. The groom's mother gave a tearful speech about welcoming Sarah into their family. Nobody asked me to speak. I left before the cake was cut. I drove 3 hours back to Sacramento, and when I got home, I sat in my dark apartment and I finally let myself ask the question I'd been avoiding for a decade. What did I do wrong? That night, sitting alone in the dark, I realized that being a mother had become my entire identity, and my children had written me out of the story of their lives without me even noticing I was becoming a footnote. I wish I could tell you that realization changed me. It didn't. Not yet. Instead, I got worse. I created fake social media accounts to follow my children's lives. I know how that sounds. I know. But I was desperate, and desperate people do unforgivable things. I watched Michael's 3 children grow up through carefully curated Instagram posts. I saw Sarah's promotion at her law firm announced on LinkedIn. I witnessed their entire lives from behind a screen, a ghost haunting the edges of their happiness. In 2015, Michael and his family moved to Seattle. I found out through one of my fake accounts, a moving truck in the background of a photo his wife posted. I immediately looked up flights to Seattle and found their new address through public records. I showed up unannounced. I can still see Michael's face when he opened the door. The shock, then the anger, then something that looked almost like fear. Mom, what are you doing here? I wanted to see my grandchildren, I said. I brought gifts. He didn't move from the doorway. You can't just show up like this. I'm their grandmother. You're a stranger to them, Mom. They don't know you. That's not my fault. The words came out too loud, too desperate. You never let me see them. You pushed me away. I didn't push you away, he said, and his voice was so tired. You suffocated us. For our entire lives, you suffocated us. And when we tried to breathe, you called it abandonment. His wife appeared behind him, holding their youngest daughter. She whispered something to Michael. He nodded. You need to leave, he told me. If you want to have any kind of relationship with us, you need to respect boundaries. You need to stop showing up uninvited, stop creating fake accounts to spy on us, stop calling my work, stop sending gifts to the kids that we never asked for. How did you? We're not stupid, Mom. We see the patterns. We see you. He paused. I'm going to say this once. Get help. Real help. Therapy. Whatever it takes. Because this, he gestured at me standing on his porch with a bag of unopened toys. This isn't love. This is control. And we're done with it. He closed the door. I stood there for 5 minutes, maybe longer, just staring at that closed door. Then I got in my rental car, drove to the airport, and flew home. Standing on my son's porch, being told I was too toxic to see my own grandchildren, I finally understood. I had spent so much time trying to be needed that I never learned how to just be loved. I did get help. Finally. Not because I wanted to change, but because I was so lonely I thought I might actually die from it. Dr. Raymond Torres was my second therapist, and unlike Dr. Palmer, he didn't let me off easy. Our first session, I spent an hour listing all the ways my children had hurt me, all the things they'd done wrong, all the ways I'd been victimized. When I finished, he asked me one question. Margaret, in all of those stories, what was your role? My role? I was their mother. I loved them. I sacrificed for them. That's not a role. That's a justification. I'm asking, what did you do? Not what you felt or what you intended, but what actions did you take? For the first time in my life, I had to actually think about it. Over the next 2 years, Dr. Torres walked me through the painful process of seeing myself clearly. We examined every memory, every conflict, every moment I'd convinced myself I was the victim. And slowly, horrifyingly, the truth emerged. I had made my love conditional on control. I had confused care with surveillance. I had taught my children that my anxiety was their responsibility to manage. I had turned motherhood into a performance where I was simultaneously the director, the star, and the only audience that mattered. I had, in trying so desperately not to be my mother, become something arguably worse, a black hole of need disguised as devotion. The most devastating thing Dr. Torres ever said to me was this: Margaret, your children don't hate you. They're grieving the mother they needed but never had, and they resent the mother they got instead. That's worse than hatred. That's loss. In 2018, I wrote letters. Real letters, handwritten, 3 pages each. I didn't make excuses. I didn't explain. I simply apologized. I acknowledged every specific thing I could remember doing that had hurt them. I told them I understood why they'd cut me off. I told them I was in therapy, not to manipulate them into giving me another chance, but because I finally realized I needed it for myself. I told them I loved them, but I was done trying to prove it through force. I told them I would respect whatever boundaries they needed, including never hearing from me again. I mailed the letters, and I waited. Michael responded 6 months later with a short email. Thank you for the letter. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm not ready to have you in my life yet, but I appreciate the apology. Sarah never responded at all. That was 7 years ago. I'm about to tell you something I've never told anyone, something that happened 3 weeks ago that changed everything I thought I knew about the story, and it starts with a knock on my door at 2 a.m. 3 weeks ago, at 2 in the morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. Not a gentle knock, a desperate pounding that jolted me awake and sent my heart racing. I looked through the peephole and saw a young woman I didn't recognize. She was in her 20s, crying, her hair a mess. Please, she said through the door. Please, I need help. My phone died, and I need to call someone. Please. Every instinct told me not to open that door. But something in her voice, the raw desperation, reminded me of Sarah at that age. Against my better judgment, I unlocked it. The woman rushed in, thanking me over and over. I handed her my phone, and she immediately dialed a number, pacing my small living room. Dad, it's me.
I'm okay.
I'm at someone's apartment.
Can you come get me?
A pause. I know.
I'm sorry.
Please just come. She hung up and handed me back my phone, wiping her eyes. Thank you so much. My boyfriend and I got in a fight, and he left me on the side of the highway. I walked for 2 miles before I found her building. Do you want some water? I asked. Your father is coming? Yeah, he should be here in 20 minutes. She sat down on my couch, and that's when she noticed the bookshelf next to my television. On the middle shelf, I keep the few photos I have of Michael and Sarah, the ones they can't delete or untag. School pictures, childhood snapshots, old family photos from before everything fell apart. The young woman stood up and walked closer to the shelf. She picked up a photo of Sarah from her high school graduation. This is you, she asked. That's my daughter, I said. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she said something that stopped my heart. She looks like my mom. I must have misheard.
I'm sorry.
Your daughter. She looks like my mom. Is her name Sarah? The world tilted. How? How do you know my daughter? The young woman turned to me, and I saw it then. Saw the resemblance I'd been too flustered to notice before. She had Sarah's eyes, Sarah's cheekbones, Sarah's mouth. Sarah Chun is my mom, she said.
I'm Emma.
I'm her daughter. I had a granddaughter. Sarah had a child, and I never knew. Emma's father arrived 20 minutes later, and before she left, she did something that broke me. She asked for my phone number. "I'd like to talk to you again," she said. "If that's okay."
My mom, she doesn't talk about you.
Like, at all. But I've always wondered. I gave her my number with shaking hands. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma and I texted. She asked about Sarah's childhood. She asked about her grandfather. She asked why we didn't talk anymore, and I told her the truth, a condensed, honest version of the truth. I told her I had made terrible mistakes as a mother, that I had driven my children away through my own actions, that I had spent the last decade trying to understand why and make peace with it. She listened. She didn't judge. And then 1 week ago, she asked if she could visit me. Really visit, not just as someone asking for help. She came over last Saturday. We had tea. She told me about her life. She was 22, a recent college graduate, working in environmental policy. She told me about Sarah, about what kind of mother she was. "She's great," Emma said. "Really great. She gives me space, but she's always there when I need her. She encourages me to make my own choices, even when she disagrees with them. She's balanced." Hearing that my daughter had become the mother I never was felt like both a relief and a condemnation, proof that breaking the cycle was possible, and proof that I had been the cycle. "Does your mom know you're here?" I asked. Emma hesitated.
No.
"Emma, I don't want to cause problems between you two." "You're not," she said firmly. "I'm an adult. I can make my own choices about who I have in my life." Then softer. "But I think you should know something. Mom talks about you sometimes. Not a lot, but she talks about the letters you sent. She's kept them. All of them. In a box in her closet." My throat tightened. "She has. I found them once when I was helping her move last year. I asked her about them. She said." Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. "She said you broke her heart when she was young, but she broke yours when she was old enough to choose not to heal it. She said she thinks about that sometimes. She said she doesn't know if she made the right choice." I couldn't speak. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face, as this young woman, this stranger, this miracle, handed me a tissue and sat beside me. "I'm not saying she's ready to see you," Emma said gently. "I'm not even saying she will be. But I wanted you to know that you're not nothing to her. You're not forgotten. You're just complicated. For 20 years, I thought my children had erased me from their lives completely, but learning that Sarah still carried me with her, even in pain, even in anger, meant I hadn't disappeared after all. I had just become a scar instead of a wound." Yesterday, Emma texted me, "Would you be okay if I told my mom we've been talking?" I stared at that message for an hour before responding. "Only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want to put you in the middle." She wrote back, "You're not. I think she should know you're getting better. I think she should know her mother is still trying." I don't know what will happen next. Maybe Sarah will be angry that Emma found me. Maybe she'll cut off contact with both of us. Maybe nothing will change at all. But here's what I learned, what I'm still learning every single day. You don't get to decide when your children forgive you. You don't get to control their healing or their boundaries or their timelines. All you can do is become someone worth forgiving, and then live with the uncertainty of whether that will ever be enough. I robbed myself of 30 years with my children because I couldn't let go of control. I turned love into imprisonment, care into surveillance, motherhood into a performance where I cast myself as both hero and victim. And now, at 73 years old, I'm learning how to be the one thing I never was before, just Margaret. Not Margaret the mother, not Margaret the victim, not Margaret the tragic figure. Just Margaret, a flawed, human woman who made terrible mistakes and is trying, maybe too late, to understand what it means to love someone without holding them hostage. When Mrs. Chen asks me about my children now, I don't lie anymore. I say, "We're not in touch right now. It's complicated." When she presses, and she always does, I smile sadly and say, "I made mistakes when they were young. I'm hoping one day we'll find our way back to each other, but I understand if we don't." It's not a satisfying answer. It doesn't make me look good, but it's the truth. And the truth I've learned is the only foundation you can actually build anything real on. 3 days ago, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. Hi, Mom. Sarah's voice. My daughter's voice, after 7 years of silence. Sarah? My hand was shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Emma told me you two have been talking, she said. Her voice was guarded, careful. She told me you've been in therapy, that you apologized to her without even knowing who she was. I didn't know, I said. I swear, I didn't know she was your daughter until... I know, she told me. A long pause. She also told me you didn't try to use her to get to me, that you told her you didn't want to cause problems between us.
I didn't know what to say.
I was terrified that anything I said would be wrong, would push her away again. I don't know if I can forgive you, Mom, Sarah said finally. I don't know if we can have a relationship. But Emma likes you, and she wants me to at least try. I understand. I managed. Whatever you need, whatever boundaries you want, I'll respect them. I know, she said, and there was something in her voice. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the possibility of it, somewhere far down the road. I read your letters. All of them. It took me a long time, but I read them. Sarah, I'm so... Don't apologize again, she interrupted. You already did. Now you just have to be different.
Can you do that?
I'm trying, I said. Every day I'm trying. Okay, she said. Then maybe we can try too. We talked for 15 minutes. It was stilted, awkward, full of pauses. But it was something. It was a start. When we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and cried. But this time, not from loneliness. From something else. Something that felt almost like hope. I will never get back the years I lost. I will never undo the damage I caused or erase the pain I created. But I learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about being brave enough to live honestly in the present, even when you don't deserve a future. So when people ask me now about my children, I tell them a different truth. I'm learning how to be their mother, 30 years too late. I'm learning that love isn't about how much you give or how much you sacrifice or how much you control. It's about how much space you can hold for someone else to become who they need to be, even when that person doesn't include you in the life they build. It's about understanding that your children don't owe you their presence just because you gave them life. They owe you nothing. Whatever relationship you have with them is a gift they choose to give you, and some of us lose the right to receive that gift long before we realize we were holding it too tight. I'm 73 years old. I live alone. Most days, I'm still lonely, but I'm not pretending anymore. And somehow, that feels like its own kind of freedom. Silence hides stories the world needs to hear. Help us share them, like, subscribe, and stay with the silent parents.